Hello, everyone. I'm Ali, and my co host, Mehmet Turan. We together have been doing this podcast for a couple of years now, I think, although we don't have many episodes. So we decided that we should switch doing this in English because we thought we could be more helpful to more people and maybe even learn more along the way. So we changed the name to Freelancers Coffee Break, which is literally a translation of what we used to call it. And I am audio producer and an editor. Also, I have an agency. Also, Mehmet has been my co-host. Mehmet, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm a retoucher and also image producer, I would say. I have been photographer for many years, but mostly I stopped photographing because the demand was more on my image creation skills. Now I've been producing images for many people all over the world. I've been a freelance retoucher for almost 8 to 9 years and enjoying it. And with you, we like sharing our experiences both on platform based, like Upwork, or direct clients. Yeah.
Yeah, we should just talk about that. Like, we've been on Upwork for several years now, both of us, and Mehmet is an expert vetted freelancer, and I'm a top rated plus. I'm not sure why they're not making me an expert vetted. It's a secret. Nobody knows. But yeah.
I guess it's because they froze the expert vetted program. They just keep the ones there, but I don't think their Upwork company is doing anything for expert vetted. I didn't see any benefit in several years, so it doesn't make any difference in life. So yeah.
Yeah, here you go. A great touch point to start with. The now non benefits of being an expert vetted. Yeah, so because nobody can see it. So what we're gonna talk about though today is we wanna talk about CRMs and how they can help your freelance career and your freelance business grow and be in order, and how CRMs can help your workflow and make you a more efficient freelancer.
In fact, let's start like this. When you're a freelancer, it seems okay. I'm doing work. People are sending me their briefs. I send them a quote, and I do the business. Why would I need a CRM? It's and if I need anything complicated, there's Excel, Google Sheets, and so on. So why I would need to invest in CRM? That's the general, I think, attitude for most freelancers, keeping and investing in a CRM, because most of the time, although some CRM solutions can be free of charge, or there's freemium programs you join as free, but later when you want to upgrade you have to pay. So you say, why I would spend money on it. Most of the cases are like that. They don't.
Can I interrupt you, Mehmet?
Yeah, sure.
Because like I'm using Asana,
Hmm.
me and my team, and Asana has this like paid option where if you're a team of like 15 or more, then it's paid. So you have to like really 15 people are a lot of people. So it's free right now. I'm using it free and quite happy with it. You know.
Yeah, there's so many free CRM solutions. Even if they are free, still you need to invest it. You have to set up a system. When you first join. So that is also lost time and energy. You're trying to learn it, because everything you need a learning. You lose time for that, and instead of going out and spending time outside or spending time with your own work and making money, you spend time learning something new, and probably something you won't be selling it. For example, if I learn something new in Photoshop, that means I can sell that skill later on. But when I learn Notion a bit more, maybe you can sell it on Upwork, but most of the time it won't be the case, because there will be some real Notion gurus and they'll surpass you. So
Yeah, it's not maybe a direct skill that you can sell, but it's something that helps you. So maybe it does at the end of the day help you make more money.
yeah, let's dive into that. First of all, before I became a freelancer, I worked in corporate life. almost like 20 years. And almost all companies I work with had some kind of CRM solution. What do we mean by that? When you make sales calls, meetings, etc., you just enter it to this system they have. There's Salesforce, there's one that belongs to other companies and databases, because companies are big, and when you leave one day, they would like to know who you spoke with in a year and what was the last meeting about, and so on. So even if you just stop going to work, they can still keep up what has been done a week before, 2 months before, or a year before with that client. So it's very important for them. But when you are as a freelancer and you spend years working together, also you cannot keep all that information in your mind. You have to put it somewhere. It can be some Google Sheets document, it can be Google Docs, and so on. So we can talk about what you can do in CRM and how we use it, so people can think about if they should invest in a CRM solution.
So here is how I use it.
Yeah, okay.
I tried everything on Asana, I think, and the best way it works for me is you just create a project, and within a project you can create tasks, right? So I put all the projects I have, all the jobs I have into this one project as tasks. And then you can create subtasks within the tasks. And you can then assign those subtasks to certain people who are assigned to do the job, and then they can check mark it, and boom, you get a notification on Slack. I connected my Slack to Asana, and every time we finalize an episode, we just change the name of the task to the next episode. Yeah, it just works. That's how I use it.
What you're using is project management, especially even if you're the only person. It's important to keep a project management plan, because you may not be getting jobs only through Upwork. You may have direct clients, or you may have clients from other platforms. And just to check when you wake up in the morning, okay, what should I be doing today? If you are an established freelancer, you should have a dashboard that you can look into and see where each project is. If even if you are not assigning, you don't have outsourcing, you don't have a team with you working with you, you should still have a project plan that when you look at it, you can see, okay, these two projects hasn't started yet. Yes, I worked with these two or three other projects yesterday. I should finish them today, and I can,
I'm
yeah.
doing that, like I'm doing that on a blackboard, like
Hmm.
literally
But
on with
yeah,
chalk, like
you
yeah,
can easily
like
do.
for my personal like stuff,
Mhm.
the tasks I had to do. It's just like Asana is more like for to keep track. Is Yeah, exactly. You're talking about that too. When you're saying as a individual, you also still have to track projects. Yeah, Mehmet is very orderly when it comes to project management and his work. Everything is like set, well thought out. So yeah, I'm hoping for myself one day, to be like that, I guess.
Project management, yeah, is one step. The other is quotation. For example, you start. First of all, let's say a new client comes in. You just type in that client's information. It's extra time, it's extra task, but now you can start having a database, and you enter that client's information as much as you can. Then you give him or her a code, and you write all the details. Now you have a project in sales stage. Then the client buys it, or says, no, this is too much for me, or I found someone else, or these are lacking, and for some reason you decide not to do it. In that case, what happens? The project is canceled. Then you can say, okay, when I quoted this 3 times or 4 times, it gets rejected. Maybe I'm quoting too much. You can now see the project that you cannot sell, and decide if you should change your pricing, for example, or change your packaging, maybe.
Yeah. So over time, Notion, I think, gives you a chart of what's like working and what's not working, so that you have a visual graphic of right? That's what you're talking about, something like that.
Exactly. Your databasing, your pricing, and also the advantage of making such database of your clients and which you couldn't sell maybe 6 months later or 1 year later or 3 months later, you can just message them, something friendly. You can just say, okay, you remember we exchanged messages. I haven't heard back from you. Is there any way we can talk? Or is there any way I can help you? Or I'd be happy to talk again if you still need my help, for example, and see if you can take it somewhere. Not immediately, but just nudge them after a time to see if they are still a potential client.
This is like one thing. Also, like another thing is like when you have like all this data, you can analyze and maybe change your approach, see what works and what does not. But yeah, this is also something that like you can do as it goes, you know? Like you can maybe if you're like sending proposals all the time, then you can maybe sense, at least for me, I could tell what's working and what's not working. And there are certain like rules on in rules where like the platform doesn't accept or the client base doesn't accept, like for example, like if you're saying that, oh, I'll do this job for $100 an hour, but then the client looks at your profile and sees that you've been working for 30, so then that kind of like raise, for example, it doesn't, something that does will not work. So yeah, there are like many, I guess, reasons for a job not to work, but yeah, that's also something that you can figure out as you move along.
Exactly. Also, once you have all this database, and if you are outsourcing from time to time or regularly, you can again pull from your CRM and check the projects that you work with other freelancers and see how much money you made on which projects and how much you paid. So you can see how profitable those projects are, or how each freelancer, the person you outsource your projects, you can see their profitability levels.
Mehmet,
Yeah,
I want to talk to you about something
yeah.
right here, okay? So, when you're saying these things, I'm imagining. So, when you get into the numbers and when things get really obvious, then that will, at least for me, that's gonna like scare me off, I'll be like panicking. So I rather like, just not look at it and just, make it happen. Elon Musk, I read this quote from him. He's saying that, oh, like you don't need to save money. Like you just need to figure out a way to the point where like you're making so much more than you can ever save. So that's like kind of my overall approach, I think, just not think about the numbers so much, and yeah, I'm just gonna see if it's gonna work.
In fact, you should think about the numbers all the time. If, let's say, one day one of the people that you work with suddenly comes up and tells you, okay, these numbers don't work me anymore, you can immediately know, okay, if it would work for you if you give a raise or not. For example, you'll say, okay, it doesn't work, let's find someone else.
Maybe when you're like working with 20 people, but when you're working like with 4 or 5 people,
Still,
you basically know though, like what's what, because like it's all, at least in my case, because it's everything I'm doing. So I know what takes how long, so I have an estimate, a rough, but it's not sustainable, of course. Like when you grow, Eh, absolutely. This is like something I would hire someone to do, actually.
so, yeah, another advantage is that you can trim off your mundane tasks. For example, you're quoting on Upwork, okay, and you know how I do it. If someone asking from me an automotive retouch, or a furniture retouch, or a cosmetics product retouch, whatever it is, I have some made up templates for that group. If it is for the first time, instead of writing directly to him, I just write it on Notion as a wiki page, and create one template for, let's say, a furniture company. Dear so and so, and I make up an exactly, a good format, and directly talk about furniture projects I worked previously. And from time,
Because you have the template for it.
yeah, I create a template for it. I talk about furniture, nothing else, and the companies that I worked before or haven't worked before. But if I take that company and in time I update it, Let's say this week I took two cosmetic companies, for example. Once I deliver the work for them, I'll include those two companies as a reference to the other companies that I'd worked before and add their names in my template, cosmetic templates.
Yeah, this is actually very efficient because, like, even though the categories are a lot less, in my case, it's either audiobook, podcast, or a meditation audio, right? And I did all of them, but every time I get like a job or like a, for example, video specific invite, like I'll have to go through my proposals and just find it. And this is like, it's just this what you're talking about just saves you from this hassle and you just know.
Yeah, I just copy, paste it, enter the name of the person, make very small adjustments. If there are any questions to be asked, I just type in those questions and send it. So in less than 5 minutes, in maybe 3, 4 minutes, I have a very adjusted proposal to that person.
Yeah, to wrap up, basically, CRMs are very useful. But I wanted to like debate something actually, but Mehmet, I forgot. So we will maybe,
So you're using Asana. It's more, I think, for
mhm,
project
yeah,
follow up. Does
yeah.
it have any kind of document archiving and things like that inside it?
Well, you can. I'm sure like it has all the functions that Notion has because they're like competitors. It has to have, but I just don't know. I just don't know those functions. Yeah.
There are HubSpot. There are so many free or freemium type CRM solutions. I used previously HubSpot. Yes, one. It was free. You can upgrade it to for paying. You have Asana. There is Trello. There is Notion. There are some other programs similar to Notion. Plus, I heard that Microsoft is trying to build something similar to Notion as well. So the market is getting crowded, but have a look if you are considering in investing now. I also used something called Close. It had very nice properties, but it's only paid only. It doesn't have any free option. And in time, I found Notion more beneficial on my side, not because I'm paying for it, not because it was free, but capabilities of Notion was a lot more than the Close, and Close had nice some functionalities that I miss.
Notion is the only CRM or program overall that I like tried and could not figure out without guidance. So it's quite like a challenge to learn Notion. That's like the I think obstacle in Notion's way, at least.
Maybe we'll in the future have an episode, since now we have a YouTube option. We can share a screen and create one, Notion. If we have enough requests, I can show how I use it, and then
We can share screens and that'd be awesome. All right, Mehmet, then let's talk about our LinkedIn group. So we have a LinkedIn group and you can join our LinkedIn group, but I'll just share the link to the show notes. And also, you can reach out to us at Twitter for Mehmet Turan is at 35 millimetre.
well, I'll add all these to descriptions. I'll add a Notion link for you if you want to check what Notion is about if you haven't to this day.
Also Asana and maybe the other apps too. Yeah. Let's just share Asana and Notion because it's a lot of work to get in those apps, get those links, and just paste that. So
Exactly. At least you are happy with Asana and I'm happy with Notion. We can put our names behind those two softwares, and you can just check it out and see which looks beneficial for you and maybe invest your time and send your questions for Asana or Notion to us. And maybe we'll make an episode specifically for those solutions in the future if we have enough questions.
exactly. Exactly. Sounds good, Mehmet. So okay then. Until next episode.